is Alessandra Moctezuma, and I'm gallery director here at San Diego Mesa College, and I also teach the museum studies classes. Welcome to our evening panel discussion about art collecting, and this is in conjunction with our exhibition in the gallery, Why We Collect the 20th Century. And so when we put together this show, Kraig brought this idea to us about collecting, and he'll talk more about it, but we thought that it would be great to begin a discussion on why it is important to support our artists, to collect art, to bring something into our homes that we love, to leave a legacy maybe to others with the work that we collect. And so we invited not only a curator, Kraig, to speak about his concept and his idea, but also Debby and Larry Kline, who are artists, but they also are collectors. Before I turn it over, I want to ask you to please let people know about the exhibition. It's really a beautiful exhibit, and it is a wonderful survey of art history for the 20th century. And it was a pretty unique exhibition for having in a college gallery, all of these works that were pretty amazing. And our museum studies students definitely learned a lot hanging the show, talking about the exhibition, working with the low light and the white gloves, because they're such delicate pieces. So please let people know about this exhibition, because it's only going to be up through November, and we want to share it with everybody. Okay. So I'm going to now introduce Kraig Cavanaugh and give it a chance to tell us.
Good evening. I got the idea originally for the exhibition. I've been working on it for 2 years, but I perpetually bring artworks into the classroom, and at a certain point, some of the artworks were getting too big, or they're getting too valuable to slug back and forth. I still have my traveling collection, which I bring into the classroom, but I wanted to. So then I was thinking, I have all these friends, and they all have some wonderful, great things. So I enlisted the support of just my peers. There isn't a wealthy person or anybody. These are teachers. I mean, we make huge amounts of money. Huge amounts of money.
Tremendous.
Yeah, and it's like, and some of them are pensioners as well. So essentially, we really know they're wealthy. Not. So, but they really had some amazing things, and they all wanted to try and share them with me, with my collections. They were willing to share their collections as well. And we were thinking this, I wanted to try and put together, so I got this idea. It's like, well, I know so many people that have so many great things. I bet you I could probably try and get most of the 20th century if I really tried. I did.
Yeah.
It took a bunch of us to do it, but I was really happy that I was able to pull this off. From Cubism to Expressionism to Dada to Surrealism to Bauhaus to Abstraction to Expressionism to second generation Expressionism, all the way up to postmodern. There's works from actually to beat cheating. 1898, which is the little postcard with the gnomes on it, to 1999. Oh no, 2000, sorry, like Thomas Kincaid. So we tried to be as encyclopedic as possible, with no exclusions allowed. So, and I love to hate Thomas Kincaid anyway. So that's why we tried to make it, and then that's why we put it next to the Linda Banglis, because we weren't sure which one was actually bigger pornography. So that was wildly my impetus to try it. It's like, I dared myself to put it together. So then I started calling my friends, and it's like I called the Klines because I knew they had artworks. I have friends who are my best friends that I go to dinner with all the time, and they have wonderful items, and one of my friends owns it, Stuart Davis. It's like, oh wow, that would be great in our show. So it's like, So it was a really grassroots effort to put this exhibition together. I mean, my mom's even loaned me 2 pieces, okay, for this show. So it's like, it's really homespun, and it's all from the heart, because I really wanted to share these artworks with you, and the entire campus. So I honored this show, you know, a lot to my brother, who gave me my very second artwork, which is my Calder, which is hanging with the big concentric black circles in it. So my brother left that to me when he passed. So that was the second artwork that I ever possessed in my life, except for the little Anmudge, which is the little disgusting gray thing that's hanging right by the door, which I even talk about, paid $125 for it, and I stretched. And so now I perpetually buy works, but they're all really for this study collection that I have made up, especially for my students. And so I want to, this is my gift to you to try and share, and this is their mutual gifts, and my friends' mutual gifts to you to share their wonderful art objects that they have with all of you. So this is Debby Kline, and this is Larry Kline. This is the Klines. They're who are wonderful collaborative artists, and they also, as I said, as Alessandra said, they also collect art as well. So they're a sense of my dearest friends as well, and we all collect together, literally, or collaboratively as well. And it's like we actually fought over, well, they won the battle, but because I didn't get the check. So
before we start, is this live? Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. You can probably hear me without. I wanted to make a mention. Somebody very important in our art community passed away this week. His name is David Anton. Some of you may have known him. Some of you younger students, I'm sure, don't know him. But he actually started the art school at UCSD. And he brought in so many of the important people at UCSD and in the art community that really gave us an amazing lively arts here. So he did it when you know, it was basically UCSD and scrubgrass, you know. So and they were just essential, and I just want to honor him.
You guys go to the Museum of Contemporary Art in La Jolla right now. There's a photography exhibition, and most of the artists who are in that exhibition, it's all kind of connected to David and his presence here in San Diego.
And his wife is Eleanor Anthony, who is very much alive, and she is one of the first feminist artists in the world. So if you don't know about them and you're studying art, you should know that these are part of your roots. Thank you for that. I apologize. Go ahead.
So we have a lot of artworks. Someone wrote some wonderful questions that they wanted us to ask us each to answer. So why do you guys collect art?
Why do we collect art? Why do we collect art? So many reasons. Number one, we love it. Number two.
Yeah, I think also, you know, as artists, it's actually almost your responsibility to collect. You become part of that community, you support the community of artists, and it always kind of comes back and gives more to you ultimately.
We always say to artists coming up in the field, they say, well, how can you collect? And we always say, oh, how can you not? It's like, if this is what you want to do as an artist, you better give back to the community starting right now. And of course, if you don't have the money, trading works is really essential. Give up a Starbucks here and there, and you find that you might have enough money to buy some real art.
Charity auctions are really great places when you know your friends are in them, and then you get your friend Perry Vasquez for $75.
That was a silly thing.
So, but the main reason I think we collect art is because we love living with it. And we love walking through our house and remembering the moment that we bought something, remembering the person.
And also I think if you're buying work that has depth to it. Those are works that kind of give to you over time, so it's not necessarily something you immediately understand, but it's something that you're attracted to, and then as you live with the artwork, it kind of gives to you. It changes your ideas about that more. And then also, the responses when you have a lot of art in one room, they all kind of respond to each other in a different way, so that also kind of affects the experience of living with the art.
And you never have to worry about what you're going to talk about at dinner. It's always there for you.
Right behind you and there.
Yeah.
I collect for, as I said, as an artist, but I love art aesthetically. I am an artist, I'm a trained artist, I have my master's of fine art, so I can create my own damn art. But there's other things that I don't do. Like my very first artwork that I ever purchased was an Ann Mudge, because it was just so, it's called subversive texture for a reason, because essentially it made my skin crawl, and it was totally fabulous the way it made my skin crawl. And it still makes my skin crawl, and every time someone comes to my house, they say, that's the most grotesque thing I've ever seen. It looks like a scrotum with hairs coming out. So they all get upset about it. So I paid $100 for it, but I bet I've had more fun grossing people out with that artwork. But I respect that artist so much, and to be able to own a piece of an Ann Mudge, and it was, I stretched for that. It was $125 at about 1990, right about 2000 is when I bought it, because it's from about 1999 from the piece. And so, I was out of college 3 years, and I didn't have any money, but so 125 was a lot of money, But essentially, it was worth it for me, because I could get my own Ann Mudge. Yeah, it was only this big, but who cares? It's my own Ann Mudge, and I've loved it ever since. I love that piece. I love all my pieces. Unfortunately, I love too many of them.
We're not talking about addiction too much tonight, except for collecting. Because it can become one. And it is.
It is.
But it's a good one to have. If you're going to have one, that's it. So
Definitely.
do you remember? One of the questions on the list is also what's our first piece. And I think Larry and I were just dating and in college, and so it wasn't really joint property. It is now, but it wasn't then. But we went into I can't remember why it was there, but there was an exhibition there, and you bought a small Damier print, which is a very political cartoonist. If you look him up, he's quite funny, but they're in French, and you have to know a little bit of French. But,
Yeah, and maybe not knowing all the history about Damier at that point, but there was something remarkable, even being an art student and knowing I had access to it. I think the print was maybe $125. And I guess that's one of the things also. It's always been a little bit of a stretch when we collect work, but some people think that collecting art is kind of beyond the capabilities of the average person unless you have lots of expendable income. And I guess one of the really important things to take away from this is that it's not. I think, maybe
99% of the artworks in that show are in museum collections. They aren't, a lot of them do not have a lot of value, but they are in museum collections. That's the great thing. Some of those things were purchased for $100, and they're in museum collections, if you just know what to look for. So come take an art history class and I'll tell you.
Here's another one too, that if you don't know what to look for, and you maybe don't have the money to spend on the class, but go find something that you love, that you look at and you can't turn away, something that pulls you in and maybe slaps you around a little bit, because what is that? What the hell is that? Why did they do that? Kind of like landscapes. Like this one, it's intriguing to me. But so buy something that is something that your questions aren't all answered immediately. Something that will grow with you.
Yeah, actually, one of probably the most important collectors we have known in our lives, Joseph Shapiro in Chicago. And Joe Shapiro actually started the Museum of Contemporary Art there. A voracious collector who loved everything that he purchased. And he felt like he was a caretaker for these objects. So even though he had amassed a collection that was worth a great deal of money, he would constantly have people coming into his house, and he would show this work, and he felt like he was only temporarily holding these until they could be shared with the public by gifting it to a museum. And in fact, at one point, he went to Cabrini Green, which was one of the rough areas of Chicago, the projects, and he would put art up there. And he realized actual art, and he realized after a while, well, the art was getting stolen, so he put up posters. And he went there and he did this in person because he felt that it was his duty and his responsibility to bring, share this beauty in the rest of the world, and he found a way to do it. As a collector, and I think a lot of great collectors are ones who are kind of ahead of the curve. One of the things he was collecting was surrealism, and he collected before any of the curators were interested in surrealism. In fact, he tried to organize an exhibition at the Art Institute of Chicago, and they wouldn't put it together. And years later, we would go and look in his flat files, and it's like, ooh, there's a Max Ernst, and there's, a Dali, and here's, he would just have hundreds and hundreds of these works that he had amassed. So one of the things is, if you are sharp and your eyes are open and you love something, sometimes collecting something that's not at the time popular is actually a really good way to go. It's more affordable, and you can become sort of an aficionado in something like that.
And we've told this story, and I apologize if some of you may have heard it before, but he actually was approached often by people who wanted to collect. And I remember one time somebody called him and said, "Joe, you need to show us how to collect." And he said, "Sure, no problem, let's go to New York." He had money to begin with. But he went to New York and took them with him, and he found this wonderfully crazy painting that he just fell in love with. And it was $350 if you need a value. And I'm telling you now that it was just aesthetically worth much more. But it was $350, and he kept trying to convince them that they should buy it. And it was this contorted face and head and things going on. They went, "Oh, Joe, that's just so disturbing. I could never live with that." And he goes, "I'm telling you now, you should buy this now. It's a great work of art." It was a Dubuffet, $350. And by the time of Joe's death, unfortunately he has passed away, but at the time of his death, he gave it to the Art Institute. It was worth $3.5 million. So, and now I'm telling you that not to tell you that it's important to buy because of money, because it's not. We don't ever sell anything, which is not a great thing, I guess.
I don't sell either.
We love them, they're like our children. But it is important to know that they do increase in value, way better than the stock market, by the way.
But,
Yeah.
He actually taught us one of the most important lessons, not just as collectors, but as artists as well, and that was, he saw something in that painting because it disturbed him in a way. It wasn't that he found it repulsive, but he didn't understand it. It was complex, it was confusing, it was disturbing, and he taught us, kind of early on, it's like, those are the things that stay with you. You will understand it a little bit more over time as it unfolds. When you see something, when you see something and you immediately like it, it's very likable, maybe just a beautiful thing. That's easy to kind of forget after a while. It becomes wallpaper, and suddenly you stop looking at it and you don't even notice it there. It's there. But something that maybe you don't completely understand, something that you find kind of confounding, those are the things that you have to kind of struggle with and learn to understand it. It's like, the book that you want to go back and read multiple times versus that book you've read it once and you never feel a need to actually go back.
Or an artist who has this technical skill that you can't figure it out. I'm lucky that I own one of the Richard Allen Morris paintings that are in the gallery, and it has this stroke that comes up, turns around, and flips back down. How did you make that? Mr. Morris is in the audience. Because I look at that painting over and over, and just, how did he do that? How did he do that? It's like, it's amazing to me. And it's so beautiful, that brought that painting to me. And I treasure that painting because I still to this day do not know. And I really don't want to know, because that would spoil the mystery, because I love thinking about how did he do that? How did he do that? It's amazing.
Is he going to spill the beans?
I don't know what to do that.
So, the next question, yes?
Are we taking these questions?
I don't know, we kind of
Well,
exploded over them.
I guess. Oh, craziest collecting experience?
Oh, we have several. Do some of you already know our craziest? No? Okay, you do. Craziest collecting experience, well, actually there are several, but the most recent one was at the Athenaeum. Yes, you do know. And they have something called the secret sale, right? This is right, crazy. And so what happens is they have these amazing little one-of-a-kind artworks. They're either paintings or drawings or collages or something, all two-dimensional works. And they have some of the best artists in the world and some of the best artists in our county included in this. And it was supposed to be a fundraiser. I don't know how successful it really was as a fundraiser, but that doesn't really matter because it was incredibly successful in educating the public on who these artists were. The pieces were up, I mean, it's not much bigger than this, and it was just hanging on the wall. And they would give you a list of all the names of the artists, but you had to figure out which one was made by which artist. I know, unless you sit there and go, I would love to have an Ed Ruscha, but I don't know which one it is. So then, this is where the education comes in, right? You have to go through and either on their website or, you know, on the walls, look at each one and goes, is that it? Is that the John Baldessari? Is that the Mel Bachner? Is this the Teddy Cruz? And you go through all these names of people that you, and so you start educating yourself if you're not already educated on what these people do. And so the crazy part for Larry and I is, again, we don't have a lot of money, but we are very dedicated to collecting. So we went to the Athenaeum the night before, and we sat on the steps, starting at 10 o'clock and camped out, so we would be first in line. And
literally camped out under a little portico.
And we kept waiting for the police to come by and tell us to move along, please. But there are no police in La Jolla. I know, right? Somebody dropped by and they actually told us where all the open restrooms were during the night, which was quite nice of them. Yes, we stayed there all night. And so we were known as the first and second, number 1 and 2. About 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 other people showed up, which we will always now refer to as 2 and 3, or 3 and 4.
Immediately shouting expletives, he was like, I told you we should have gotten here. I mean, when no one was there, we actually thought we had arrived on the wrong day. It just wasn't going to happen.
Because we thought, surely these people, I mean, the names in this group were incredible. Like I said, Mel Bachner, John Baldessari, Teddy Cruz.
I would have been there too with you, but I was in the hospital that week.
I know. And I'm sorry, but thank you. And so anyway, we, from 10 o'clock until 9 o'clock in the morning, when they opened the doors, Larry and I sat there with our computers and the images online and looked at each one and tried to figure out which one was which artist. And we thought we were pretty sure that we knew the Mel Bachner and the John Baldessari. We had our suspicions of the Ed Ruscha, but we weren't exactly sure. So when we went through, we picked the ones that we want. Now these works, I can easily tell you, they were $200 a piece. Exactly. And so we were going to buy one. And then we decided, well, you know, we're first. And if we figure out which one, maybe we'll just go ahead and, you know, happy birthday.
And Christmas and Hanukkah and anniversary.
We're up to about
2050.
Yeah. So we were first in line, and we walked in, and I'm here to tell you today that we walked out with the John Baldessari and the Mel Bachner. And we were ecstatic. Now, normally we don't buy things because of their monetary value, but when you're standing there first in line and you know who those people are, and we love the works as well, but we went ahead and said, you know, let's just get those. Now, here's the key though. It's a little embarrassing, but we actually, after we went through, and the people behind us, by the way, got the Evershay. But after we were done, we went through the line again. And we got 2 more of works that we absolutely just loved the imagery on them. And so we made out like bandits. So these are some of our prized sessions. That's probably our craziest. Could you add to anything like that?
No, just other than the fact, like, the format was brilliant because, you know, I've gone to plenty of museum shows, but I've never seen people feel the need to take on this sort of scholarship immediately. And everybody that came after 5 o'clock in the morning, by the time the gallery actually opened, I think there were probably about 80 people there. And it was like this little sort of tent community, and everybody was talking about the art. Everybody was speculating.
And whispering, what are you going to get?
And everyone was doing research. They had out their phones, they had their laptops out, and they were trying to figure out everything they possibly could about the artist. And I've never seen a vehicle that would actually make people want to study so strongly about the artist and the quality of the work that they're seeing.
And we heard rumors that there might have been someone who, on staff or board, I can't remember, but they thought maybe somebody had told us which ones were the Baldessari and the Mel Bachner. And of course they did not. And we sat there and we were matching text online to, oh, look, that text looks just like the text on this one. I think that's it. You know, so we're making our decisions on very educated processes. And so after the fact, we actually wrote a little essay on our night at the museum, if you will. And they read it to their board. And it was just, it was an amazing, amazing thing. And we've made, as an artist, we made amazing connections with other collectors now who were in that same line. Specifically 3 and 4 and 5 and 6.
And
when we see them out, that's what we refer to each other as.
And definitely, you know, kudos to Erica Torrey too, because this was really the product of the exhibitions that she put on over the years while she was there.
Oh, we should have said that, yeah.
Yeah, it was an amazing roster of artists. And the truth was, she could have sold the entire exhibition for more than that. And actually, if you did the math and you looked at the artworks, the logic was just buy everything in the entire gallery and then sell it off piece by piece and you would make a profit. But
a huge profit.
But they weren't doing it for that. They were really doing it as a way to actually build community and get people involved and make them feel like they're part of the institution. That was a huge thing to do. It was really a generous and nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think effective.
I'll just add one other crazy experience is that if you want to collect and you think that you might go to an auction somewhere, but you figure that everybody's going to outbid you, go in California when it rains.
Or eBay in Britain after Brexit.
But nobody shows up in California because they think it's snow, right? They go, I'll go to the auction next week. And we've gone to a couple of auctions up in Los Angeles and made some of the best decisions in our entire collection because of that. So, here's one. How about yours? What?
My craziest one is my Beth Sorelli. And that's what I bought on Park Boulevard at the secondhand store. It's the 1950 store that was right across from the Egyptian Theater. So I was walking in, and it's overcrowded, and you can't see anything, except I knew exactly what it was.
The gaze. Did you see that gaze?
And it was this Vasarely. It's the op art with that looks like the circles coming out at you. It's from his Helios series, but I didn't know which series it was, but I knew it was signed. I knew it was a 200 of 200. What that means is that was the first one printed.
Whoa.
Because as you come off the stacks, that's the one that went down in the stacks first. So it was 200 of 200, so that's the first one printed. It's 200 of 200, and so there it was sitting in this god-awful, cheesy frame with a plastic that was all scratched and smoke, nicotine all over it. But I carefully looked at the paper. I said, "Can I see that up there?" And I walked over and he said, "Sure." Pulled it down. Had $100 on the back. So I was looking at the front, and I turned it over. There was the original price tag from the gallery, slipped onto the back for $500 from the 80s. So I took out my wallet, gave the man $100, and ran.
By the way, that horrible tradition, we call that authentic.
And then I reframed it, and now it is worth the $1,200 that it really is. It's worth, so it's like $100. Stick to that $100.
So another one.
What else do we do? Oh, your favorite work in the collection?
Oh, it says the favorite work in our collection. They're all, it's like saying which is your favorite child. But some that you might associate with as well. And you'll see several of these in the collection over here. It's called SMS Portfolio, which, please excuse me, but it means shit must stop. And it's a wonderful compendium of works from different artists that are really well known. They weren't necessarily that well known at the time they were printed in the 60s. But one of my favorite ones is there's what's called a Yoko Ono Peace Cup. And the idea was that she takes these cups and breaks them and then passes them out to the world. And when everybody takes their cup and re-glues it and puts it back together, that somehow will make peace happen in the world. Beautiful thought. If you glue it back together, though, you're ruining the peace. So, now I have a little bit of a dichotomy to deal with. So, of course, we have a little tube of glue that is from 1968. It's pretty dried up. And a little bag of shards from a cup. And it's our fault that peace will not happen.
Or it's her fault because
It's
she
her
does
fault.
know.
That's right. It's her fault. That's one of my favorites. How about yours?
Mine is we have a Philip Guston piece, and it was actually the last print that he made, and it's this strange, hairy little cartoonish car. And I guess the image itself is a very, very powerful and evocative one, but there's something else about it, and that is Guston himself. He was an artist who came out of abstract expressionism and was very popular and had a great deal of success. He had solo shows at, I think the Jewish Museum had a solo exhibition of his work, and I think the Brooklyn Art Museum also did. And so he had a great deal of popularity and success doing that work, and then he walked away from it. He decided that it just wasn't enough for him. He wanted to kind of tell stories. He was sick of, maybe, in his words, I think he said something like, "I'm sick of the purity," and he wanted to do something else. So he walked away from that and started creating these images that were based on sort of cartoon-like images. They're strange and they're dark. They look sort of like underground comics, I guess you would say. It's sort of the precursor to that stuff.
Yeah.
And that he had the guts to do that. And I think for most artists, that's like the huge challenge, to be able to change directions when you feel like something has played out and move on to that next thing, that next challenge.
Especially when everybody keeps saying, "Oh, make another one of those."
Yeah, because it's easy to, once the works are selling, it's easy to just keep doing that.
Churning them out.
Exactly. So I think, he's kind of a heroic figure for a lot of reasons. And the power of that image, it's something we wake up to and we see in the morning. So.
And when we looked it up, we think that he actually may have made it when he was ill and in his hospital bed. And when you look at it, it's this wonderful little car. It's a print. And if you had it leaning on you, the car would be higher up on the page. And so again, this is our thoughts. There's nothing documented about this, but we think that that's probably how it was made, because he was in bed and maybe it was one of the, it was the last. So it's a very special one. Special to consider today.
Favorite.
Tell us about your
You have to
babies.
choose a favorite.
Well, it's really hard because I don't buy anything that I don't love.
Right. Yeah, on this question, we could all sit up here and tell you the history of every one of our works, and you would absolutely be blown away with each story, right?
Well, see, I'm an instructor and I teach art history. So for art history, I think the most important piece is the recording of Marcel Duchamp's voice on the back of the record. And to get a digital copy of that made, and so that I can have it all to play for you guys over and over, so you can hear the words in France of Marcel Duchamp. I think art historically, that's the most important piece. Aesthetically, it's a tie. I think between my Al Held print, which is the one with all the geometric shapes in the back corner, and my Richard Allen Morris painting. I mean, I love those things. I look at them every day, and I sit there in awe and wonder, and just like, the colors, the brushstrokes, the colors, the brushstrokes. And I think aesthetically, I look at those ritually every day. And we're right outside my bathroom. So it's like, whee!
Oh, and can I add one, since there's two of us? That doesn't make any difference because we've talked about. But there's one in there that, it's the Robert Mapplethorpe piece in there that is of his lover, Ken Moody. And for me, that is such I mean, it's a beautiful portrait of his boyfriend, but it's such a significant piece historically, because it was one of the first times that someone who had homosexual tendencies that became that well known. And so for me to own something that is made by someone about that love and that kind of, but the quality of the print as well is just so strikingly beautiful. For us to own that is incredibly, incredibly special to me.
If you look at the surface, like the surface of the skin, it's like a search for perfection.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, just the tone of the skin, the lack of hair, it's really just like this beautiful, pure, pristine, stunning surface.
And that kind of smoky quality that it has, which is just like, it just radiates
Right, and
history.
you know, in the search for more information about that print, I found Ken Moody on Facebook. And so I've asked him if he knows anything about that print or remembers anything, but he hasn't answered me back yet. So we'll come back next week or something and tell you. But it, you know, that's the other thing about it. It connects you. Art connects you with the rest of the world. And even though that lifestyle is not mine, it helps me to understand it. And that's, I think, a really essential part of his whole series of works. So.
I also think, for those of you who, I mean, you've seen some of the works of the SMS portfolio, but you might not have known how it works. So it was kind of interesting. It was this idea of bypassing the gallery system and getting art directly to the people that were interested in collecting things. So the portfolio was created, and every 2 months you would actually get one of these little packages in the mail.
A mystery box,
Yeah.
literally a mystery box.
There were these strange little things. They were all printed. So William Copley, who was the heir to Copley Publishing, was connected to this. So he had access to presses, and they could make very sophisticated, very rich prints. And they made, I think, 2,000. Was that correct?
There were originally 2,000 prints, but only 600 of the subscriptions sold, and they were warehoused, and 1,100 got flooded and fired. So there's really only 600 left in the world.
And Larry and I are lucky that I used to work at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, and we bought one of the last remaining sets for the collection at the MCA. And
I have number 2. I have number 2.
And then the night that we bought that for the museum and I started cataloging it, I went home to Larry and I said, there's this piece of art I think we can own and I think we should buy. And it was at that point one of the most expensive pieces we'd ever bought. And I don't remember exactly what we paid for it, but still, you know, anything we buy is expensive. And we made the decision and we called the New York Gallery and they said, oh, I have one left, one complete set. And so we said, we'll take it. And so among those, you see several of them in the collection, and like I said, he has a set as well. There's Yoko Ono, Roy Lichtenstein,
Joseph Kassouf, Christo,
Marcel Duchamp,
Liechtenstein.
I mean, I could just go on and on. Every name that you can possibly think of somehow got into this beautiful set. And it's just it's a joy. We don't get it out all the time. It's kind of like owning a Japanese scroll that you would only take out when company comes out and you look at it and then you put it back in and you put it away where it's safe.
Now mine's in a special box, except 3 of the images I have framed and they're actually on the wall, but everything else, especially in a hermetically sealed box.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think part of the beauty of that is, so it's also like the $200 mystery auction. You know, you would sign up for this, you had no idea what you're getting, and just on fate, people thought that these were interesting. The artists were not, you know, many of these artists were not famous at the time. There's even like a Bruce Nauman in there, like a little tape piece. I mean, there are really some stunning things in it.
The Bruce Nauman, I have to tell you, the Bruce Nauman is just a strip of magnetic tape for an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. And you were supposed to take the tape and run it through the reel-to-reel and you'd hear Bruce's footsteps. It's so cool.
It's actually the only piece we've never heard.
But we still have it.
But fascinating. You know, I think that's interesting. I think also like collectors who, I think I mentioned before, collect outside of what is sort of the hip thing at the time. So if you think about people like, you know, Urban, Dorothy Bogle, who collected.
So have I ever heard of them?
They're the ones that donated their entire collection to the National Gallery, and it was like they had early everybody.
Yeah. So we had, you know,
They inspired us as well.
librarian and a postal worker who amassed, you know, millions of dollars worth of art.
And they
Because
bought art with his salary, and they lived off her salary. And he was a postal worker, and she was a librarian.
And sort of even beyond the fact that they made that sacrifice, part of it was that they were so hungry. They wanted to know everything. They were collecting minimalism at a time when minimalism was not quite that popular. And they said, you know, they would go to a studio and they wanted to see everything, including things that the artist didn't even necessarily want to show or even think were germane. But they were so keyed in, they could see, you know, this strange little object that even the artist maybe doesn't quite entirely understand the importance of. They would recognize the connection between that and their later work. They would want to see everything, not just whatever happened to be in the gallery at that time. And I think that's also part of the idea of being a real collector, is that your curiosity is really one that can really kind of, it's a journey. It's approaching a mystery and really trying to figure out, you know, everything you possibly can and truly understanding the works.
And it wouldn't be beyond me to contact an artist and say, hi, I have $200, do you have anything I could buy? They might never respond to you, but they might call you and go, that's so sweet, yeah, I have something.
Well, especially like a study or something like that,
Exactly.
they might have something. I mean, like over the summer, the Japanese print that's right next to the Alhaldhead, which is the little chrysanthemums, like the little #1. So I couldn't find any information on that print, so I actually tracked the guy down and we corresponded via email over the summer. And it turns out the print was actually made when he was still in Japan, because he's a native from Japan, but now he's a full professor at the University of Oregon. And now we have this communication thing going, and so it was really excited that he's having a piece in our exhibition, and it's just like, and the way that it talks to the Alhald with the colors and they're actually, he was thinking in terms of rectilinear shapes and geometric, the same way that Alhald was, and so, but his has those little like chrysanthemum drips. So it's like that, but to have that communication of, and to find out that it was made when he still, before he even had left for the States, you know, before he'd emigrated, and to realize, and we didn't have any idea even how old it was. Now I know it's from the 80s. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's really old. I mean, not really old for that, but for, you know, because majority of his work that was known is from at least 2000 forward, and to have something that's that old from him is like, he was still in grad school.
Yeah, absolutely. So other thoughts or,
Take some questions.
yeah. What do you guys want to know about collecting?
What's a good place to start looking for art in San Diego?
Who's saying that? Thank you. I hear a voice, but I
You guys
think,
are all saying like 200, 350, whatever, and I'm thinking like, I have pieces of clothing or pairs of shoes way more expensive than that, so I'm like, maybe this is my game, maybe I should start doing something
There's
like this.
2 auctions.
thank you.
The one great auction is for the art school in Hillcrest that they have, and it's held annually at Bread and Salt about June, and that's a really great one. And sometimes your friends who just moved to Escondido with that new,
Oh, RJ?
yeah, the Ship in the Woods, and they had a fundraiser last year, and the fundraisers are the gold mines in terms of wonderful things that you can buy.
Don't underestimate just contacting some artist that you like. By the way, we are www.jugglingclines.com.
There you go.
My box is 2248.
There are also galleries that have works. Thumbprint Gallery,
San Diego Art Institute,
San Diego Art
don't they do an
Institute.
annual, I mean, I'm sure you can go anytime, but they actually do an annual under $500 dollars for all.
Oh, they have a C-note sale.
So, yeah.
It's a C-note sale.
Well, they also have the monster drawing.
Yeah.
And then
Monster
to
For tomorrow.
plug something that we do, my students the last 3 years, my museum studies students have been collaborating with SDAI. We've been doing a booth at the San Diego Art Show. And all of the artists that we asked to participate in our booth, everything is under $500. And we sell more art than pretty much a lot of the other booths because it's affordable and it's wonderful artists.
It is.
You can get tickets to that for free really easily if you just ask around, because they kind of float around, and so you can
Actually,
get
we're gonna have a booth, so contact us. We can
Yeah,
get
or
you.
contact us, either one of us, and we'll have free tickets for that.
And also, walk through an art school
Exactly.
and look at the students' work. And if there's something that you like and you approach a student and you go, I like that work, what would you charge me for it? Number one, they'll have no idea. But if you could cover dinner, that would be fabulous.
And that's the other thing, at the end of the semester, many of the schools, including ours, have a student art show.
Yeah.
And many of the works are for sale, and many of those works are amazing and beautiful. We've had galleries come to the student shows and purchase works from the students. So don't,
Even our ceramic sale.
And
Not all-
I have a house full of ceramics.
if you only have like just like $10 or $15 and you still want to get art, some of those universities and schools in San Diego have their own auctions. And I have a very humble collection of mostly just local artists, but that's how I collected my first pieces. I was a student at SDSU. They had a graduate student auction, and you could bid on stuff that normally your friend would sell for $200 or more, but maybe you only had $20, and you could likely get it. So there's actually a lot of different levels that you can kind of
Yeah.
get into.
All this said, I want to say a little bit about auctions, and that is that they're not the best thing for the artist. And the reason I say that is,
They're lost.
I mean, it has to be said, it has to be
We
said.
get screwed.
If you can contact the artist directly and say, or through their gallery and say, I would like to purchase this, you can still get amazing, amazing deals. What happens at an auction is very often, the artist likes the organization and they will give the work to the auction to be auctioned off. And then if they don't have what's it called, a reserve on it, then they might sell that work for $20, and it might be worth, maybe a couple of $1,000s. What
And then
happens then
sometimes
is
the artist doesn't get a penny.
Yeah, well, we never participate in any auction unless they give something back to the artist. And we don't do it necessarily for us, but we want the organizations to understand that's an important thing, to pay back the artist. And we tell them that every time. So that said, if an auction, when it goes below your normal prices that you sell something, it can hurt your bottom line as an artist. So you want to just make sure that they're going to sell it at a reserve, and maybe you're going to get 50% of it back or something like that, or you can give it all to them. That's fine too. You just want to make sure that it's a good situation for yourself if you're an artist.
Yeah, the other thing is going to a school and buying a work there. I mean, you're encouraging an artist. It might be their first sale, or maybe they've only had a few sales. You're really making a difference. You're helping them perpetuate their career. So I think it's an important thing that you can do.
There's nothing better for an artist, especially in school, than when somebody approaches you and says, I want to buy that. And they will talk about that, believe it or not, for the rest of their life.
Two of the artworks that I have, I've traded with my teachers when I was a student. So, that was, talk about humility. A teacher won one of my pieces, but two of them did. So I've got two really nice pieces by relatively well-known artists.
How do you feel about artwork and like gallery, open gallery? Do you do any of that?
Do we do it?
Yeah, I mean, like go to open gallery and art walk.
It's a great place to buy art. It's a great place to start to buy art. We were in it 1 year, I think, but we don't do that. We are in the art fair this year. They've asked us to come back, and we're going to be doing that, but that's kind of a different thing. They're amazing things. Find out what you like. Number one, you have to go look in an art history book and find out what you like. Maybe take his class, But the art is out there, and it's an amazing. Yeah, you definitely, for a good pair of shoes, you can get maybe two and a half pieces of art. Depending on the shoes.
And with the art, you can live forever, because clothes, you're either
You're going to wear them out, the dog will chew them up.
But an art piece is going to be there hanging in your living room or your bedroom, and you're going to look at it and you're going to love it for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And they're
I
precious.
have to have different options of that clothing, because if you have found something that made by Coco Chanel or somebody like that, you will keep it forever. That's I'm sorry. Fashion major.
Yes, but it's easier to conserve a two-dimensional work than it is a fabric. I'm just saying, because I worked in museums. You had a question up there?
Beyond over here, I had a question.
You're next.
Don't be put off by galleries. Many people
Yes.
are downright frightened to go into the gallery because they think, they're not going to, well, students, they're not going to respect you, they're going to discount you. But you find sometimes really, really affordable works at galleries, especially right now, they're all hurting. So you can get things for $500, $250, $300, if you're lucky. But if you want something very badly and you cannot afford it, just talk to the gallery owner and say, would you accept time payments? And you'd be surprised.
I just finished a time payment. It took me 6 months to pay it off. Just finished.
We had
$600 is like $100 a month. It took me 6 months to pay it off.
We had a piece that we did. It's a ceramic chess set. It's very, very political, but somebody fell in love with it. And I think at the time it was, $1,200 or $1,500. And we had a student approach us. She goes, I really want that. I'm not sure it even fit in her apartment, but she really wanted it. And she said, can I pay you on time? And we went, sure, no problem. And so she paid us diligently, like every month, and the day she got to take that home, she was ecstatic. And that was the first piece that she owned.
What was it?
It was one of our works. It was a political chess set that we made out of ceramics.
Oh, so each piece, all 16 pieces from each side was you molded those together?
Yeah.
That was pretty
Again, you can see it on our
That's
website.
it's called the Game of Panther, and it has to do with war, actually, in the Middle East, and it's a very complicated chess set.
So is it like a Middle East set of a chess set?
We thought it was an unplayable game, because it's, one side is all images of women in burqas in the hijab, and the other side is all American culture, like soldiers and Statue of Liberty and stack of gold coins is the king, of course.
Make 5 or 6 moves, it's very difficult to know what's going on. So what tended to happen was people actually shared and communicated with each other in order to try to keep the game as fair as they
It was very life affirming for us. Right?
So it's an
Although in a lot of cases it was still so complicated that they ended up cheating.
I'm sorry, what?
So is it an unplayable chess set, or is it?
We thought it was unplayable when we made it, but guess what? We took it to the chess championships over at Liberty Station, and they played it. They don't care, they just know this piece goes there and this piece goes there.
Although we videotaped the matches and we had 2 chess masters.
That's
both
right.
Both that cheated. One cheated during the game on video, and then the person who's playing said, "Wait, you just moved your pawn over here."
That was actually in New York when we played.
As well, he was talking about his ranking. And then another one we actually took to the art fair here. And we had a chess master playing. He played against someone from Russia who had played his whole life. He wasn't a ranked master, but he was a very good player. And so the guy who was ranked, the master beat him hands down, and the other guy was really depressed. And as we were packing up, the master came running up to us about 45 minutes later. He said, "You have to help me find the guy I played. I just realized I cheated him. I've been going over in my head."
Every move that he had made. I'm lucky if I can remember 3 moves back, So,
that's cool.
but you can. The bottom line on this is that you can easily pay on time, and it's not a big deal. And sometimes they might even let you keep it before you pay.
I've had that to me, so I've had works longer than I've owned them.
You got a question back there?
Well, so let's say you went to a gallery 20 years ago and you bought a piece that you really liked 20 years ago, and you're tired of it. Where do you go to sell it? I mean, I get a garage sale, but...
The first question is, we haven't had that happen. So we kind of like everything that we have. But if I had to sell something and I wanted to take it, there's a lot of different places. You can sell it on eBay, you can sell it, if it's a certain level, you can sell at Sotheby's and Christie's and those kind of things.
Or on a consignment from a gallery that would do that if it was a piece they would think would sell or have.
You could also put a reserve on it, and then make sure that if you knew what it actually was worth, and you could donate it, but then you put a reserve in terms of what you think it's worth, and then that's the lowest price, and then anything that they give, they could get the windfall from too. You could think you could do it that way.
And there are places locally in San Diego that do that?
There are number of organizations that accept charitable, there are opportunities, and I know of them. So if you want to come across the street and have coffee, we can talk.
But I'm telling you right now, you'll end up selling your work to him.
This was his way of getting first dibs.
So come talk to us first.
No, you're right next to neighbors.
Somebody else have a
Yes.
question?
Well, I just, playing on what you just said, is there any kind of forum or place to find out about the buyer, like going direct to a buyer instead of selling through auction or selling through a gallery on consignment or selling through, do you just have to know people who might be interested in art that you have to sell, or, is that kind of an odd question?
Or you're an artist and you want to find buyers for your work. You're an artist.
No, but I have some pieces and I'm thinking, how do I sell them? How do I sell them? How do I go through, how do I get to an end user versus paying a commission and paying?
Well, eBay is really, I've sold all these things on eBay.
eBay, believe it or
I
not.
got tired. When you do the research of how much it's worth, they do take, small amount commission.
But
Yeah.
that's work.
We actually have bought a couple of works on
really
eBay.
well.
I buy lots of works on eBay.
Actually,
I've looked at eBay, but I've never known if that's, I don't know.
Legitimate.
Legitimate.
That's your
Or not
question.
legitimate, but is it, I don't know, tacky or to sell?
No.
If you get a really good artwork, it's not.
It's not.
tacky.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, if you do buy off of a source like that and you don't know who the seller is, investigate them. And I don't mean go out and buy, somebody to follow them around.
Make sure they have enough stars and they have enough sales so they have a reputation. Because if they have under 15 stars, I don't deal with them, because I actually want people who have hundreds of stars.
And then also,
really reputable.
So if I have a piece of art, little old me, that wants to sell something, how are they gonna trust me?
well, there's sort of backups with eBay too. Number one, they'll sell something and you can send it to them and then they have like a certain amount of time
To return it.
Like buyer
if it
protection.
doesn't work.
Yep.
And if you're selling work, you want to give as much of the provenance, what's called the provenance of that piece as you can, where you purchased it. If you can trace it all the way back to the artist, that proves that number one, it is that piece and it is, of that artist. And that's important, especially if you're buying from somebody you don't know. So that's my best advice to you on that. Take pictures of any markings on it, any signatures, any addition marks, things like that. Take pictures of the front and the back.
If
Disclose
it's
if there's
paper,
any
the
little.
watermark makes a difference
Yep.
because you can tell if it's an old piece of Darches versus a new, just because it has an infinity or it doesn't have an infinity symbol on it. But a watermark is when it's been a laid paper and a screen and there's a weave in the mesh screen that the paper's made out of, and it leaves a residual mark. And you can hold it up to the light, like our new money, where you're supposed to look at your hundreds and to see if it's real. But paper does, good paper has a watermark. It'll either have a manufacturer's date or, a name or a symbol for it, every Fabriano to Darches to everybody.
Could you say a few words about taking care of your artwork in terms of cleaning?
Please do.
Yes. Paper, just lack of light, and make sure, it depends where you are also in terms of how close to the ocean you are. If you're close to the ocean, be very, make sure that it's framed and under glass and actually has like a watertight seal to make sure that moisture can't creep in. Even works on paper. Paintings on canvas, that's why paintings on canvas were invented in Venice, because of so much moisture. So they're safer to have near the ocean. Now, my mother lives right in Mission Beach, and she's got some paperwork that the water seeped in and got into the mat, and it's like, I know there's gonna be mold under there, so anything on paper, I'm making sure it's sealed. But she has oil paintings that are lasting fine because oil painting was invented for the humidity in Venice.
And you can tell if you have a print and you look at the print and there's a little dark spot, that's probably a little piece of mold that's starting to grow. Now that's, even though you might totally freak out, it's totally fixable. You can just take it to a conservator and they will fix it for you, but you want to make sure it's a reputable conservator. We have Balboa Art Conservation Lab here in the city that is very, very good.
It's also a little pricey though, so you have
They're
to
very pricey,
you have
but-
to weigh how much the piece is worth versus, unless you
Well,
really love
that's
it.
very true, that's very true. Yes,
Another
Well,
local
I was
place
just
we
going to add that you want to be careful about who does any work on your art.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's why I
Because you
said-
can, it is a professional activity. And
Well,
there are very few places on the West Coast that you could really trust at a
And
museum
there's a big-
level. So again, the Balboa people are terrific, but they're busy.
yeah.
That's the other thing.
And if you can't afford them and they're too much and they're too busy, then say, okay, who can I take it to? And they will give you somebody who is also reputable.
And probably a good thing would also be like contact museums that have conservation departments. There's a big difference between
And some of
conservation
the-
and restoration.
Mhm.
And some
Exactly.
people
That's
think of them
a
as the
very-
same thing, but
Yes.
they're not. And
Exactly.
you have to
And
be very leery
galleries.
with restoration.
Galleries who deal in secondhand works would do it as well.
Don't let them use bleach.
Yeah,
Be
you want-
careful.
You want a conservator that believes in sort of the Hippocratic oath, do no harm.
Do no harm.
Step one. And if you
We've
find
heard
somebody
some, working in the museum field, we have heard some real horror stories about that. So it's just like anything else, do your own due diligence and make sure that the people you deal with are reputable, and from collecting and selling and doing repair work, to anything else. And sometimes you can actually contact a conservator and they can tell you how to fix something yourself if indeed you're an artist. We've done that for a couple of works.
Yeah. Plus the first big piece that I sold.
I mean,
When I was in college, it was a painting. It was a very large painting.
triangular shape.
I was also working at the museum, so I happened to get a hold of this stretcher that they were getting rid of from one of their exhibitions. And I stretched it, and it was about 10 feet long, this triangular thing. And of course, we had no vehicle to get it home from my exhibition. And I sold it, and it was actually a very good sale for me then. It was by far the most expensive thing I'd ever sold. And so we had no way to get it home other than to put it on top of our van and hold it on both sides, which turned out to be a hang glider. And yes, it took a flyer off the back of our truck, and it ended up with a 2-inch rip in it. And we were working at the museum, so I talked to the conservator, and they told me what to do.
It's actually pretty easy.
It's not rocket science,
Yeah.
but.
And
you do have to
I made
do
the
it.
repair, and I went back to the collector, and I said, you know, I have to be honest with you, it's got a tear here. And they said, I can't see it, and I love the painting, and I want it anyway. And so
But he wanted to disclose, you know, that it had a tear. But since he's the artist, you know, you patch it with a little piece of canvas and you repaint it exactly like you painted it before.
I
in this
paint,
case, so, yeah, so that was a good one. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to tell you, remind you that there's a resource on the San Diego Visual Arts Network.
Thank you, yes.
Which is called the Smart Collector, and it's on the top menu bar of every page on the site. And basically what we did was we invented a table of contents for a book about collecting art, and then commissioned articles on all of these subjects. And if you go to the site and click on Smart Collector, and it's divided into 5 main sections: the beginning collector, places to collect, interviews with collectors, all sorts of things. So it's it's a very large resource that's all available, and it actually is all local.
And by the way, this is Patricia Fisher, and the first time Larry and I ever sat on a panel talking about collecting was through her. And so it was through COBA, I think, yeah.
And the first time we ever were in a show together was Art Walk.
That's exactly true. That was the art walk. That's right. So, yes, oh, yeah, what? This?
Talk about the battle.
Oh, yes. So we are part of the provenance of one piece. This piece over in the show, it's a Man Ray piece called Cadeau, which means the gift. You want to tell what happened? Who wants to tell?
I'm at
Or shall we fight about it?
Well, we should do the narrative and the way it occurred.
Okay.
So I had found that it was online on Italian eBay for an absurdly low price. I'd only seen it for nearly $3,000 in any US gallery. Even in Europe, it was going for 2,000 euros, and I found it. And it's like, and I was gonna buy it instantly.
He was hot.
I was waiting for 2 checks for $600 that didn't come. And so I was telling them about it at a dinner party.
And we were so jealous. We were so jealous.
Because it was such an absurdly low price. And I said, and they called me the next day after the party. I said, if I find out about this check, and then the check didn't come the next day, and then it's like, I called them on the phone, I said, buy it! Don't even hesitate, because I want that piece in San Diego.
Yeah,
First, now wait, there's a little part left out. Right?
Yeah, we said you're okay with us buying it. You said,
Yes.
I'll hate you forever, but yes, you should buy it.
But buy it!
So he has hated us forever.
Why didn't you call your brother?
What?
I wouldn't call my mother to buy art. I have to earn that myself. So anyway, but then last week, thank God, about a month and a half ago, we had that wonderful thing called Brexit, and the euro went plummeting, and at 86 cents. So this last week, I got my own Cadeau for less money than they paid.
I hate you forever.
And times the lower numbers.
But either way, it is the gift. So we love the piece, and we will cherish it forever. And we've actually lusted after that piece for years and wanted one and just never thought that we could afford it. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the piece. Could you tell us more, a little bit about it?
This is Man Ray's Cadeau, which means the gift. It was a flat iron, and in the olden days before they had electric irons, you had what was a cast iron that was flat. You put it on a potbelly stove, and then you let it heat up, and then you took it and you ironed your sheets with it, or whatever you were ironing. So this was an absurd piece created by Man Ray in 1921, where he decided during the Dada movement to create something that was absurd. So essentially an iron's supposed to be usable. So essentially he glued a bunch of nails to an iron, which he actually used and actually shredded a piece of clothing with an African-American woman that he then had dance with all the shreds. He said it was really gorgeous of her bronze body, et cetera, et cetera. But everyone was all about sex in the Dada period. But anyway, so they created a piece. Now the gift, he gave it to somebody and it became a gift. And so that became the name of it because he gave it to somebody. But then it got thrown away. But the reason I think it is because the way that they're just glued on. My suspicion is that the nails just fell off and then it wasn't funny anymore and then someone pitched it. And then there was 4 subsequent editions and this is the 4th edition. So it's a Dada artwork. It was supposed to be crazy and outrageous and to push the buttons of normalcy in terms of what expectation of art is. So this is a 3-dimensional object, ergo it's sculpture no matter what. But by putting the tax on it, he rendered it useless. So it became an ironic object.
I have another theory about it as well. And this is not based in any historical fact, but it's just something that I feel. When you see Yoko Ono's piece called Cut Piece, I have a feeling that she at some point saw this. I mean, it's pretty out there. But to think about cutting the clothing off of someone, if you don't know that piece, she sat on stage and she invited the audience to come up and cut a piece of her clothing.
Until she was down to her neck or under.
So it was about violation of women, which is timely for this week.
I think the other thing about like Dadaist art is this idea of absurdity, but there's also something not absurd about this, and that is it's really like a concentrated use of duality. So it's got 2 things going on. The iron is this idea of domesticity and home and comfort, and then you turn it into this object of violence that also can't be used, so it loses its functionality. But I think more than just the absurd is really the kind of duality, and I think a lot of the strongest artworks have that. They pull you in and they push you away simultaneously, and you have to decide what that means and where to start.
And it makes you ask all those questions.
Something to make you think about forever. The best kind of art.
So Kraig teaches contemporary art.
19th and 20th century
he loves,
contemporary art.
he knows everything about everything. And he makes it fun too.
I'm peculiar. My friends are peculiar too. We're all having a really good time.
Thank you all very, very much, and we hope that you'll all go out and buy art.
Don't be afraid to, and don't, $100.
And it's okay if you make a bad decision, because then you can always say, this is the first one I got. It wasn't the
I
first
can,
decision.
yes, this time, say that.
I have been really holding this back for quite a while now. And I also think that everyone should be a collector of something, but preferably art. But then observing these wonderful people here, you understand that it may result into addiction.
I don't know what she's talking about.
No, but you. Art addiction, one of the finest to have in the world.
Well, it's also, I want to say one last thing, and considering that you're not born here.
Oh, that too.
And that in Europe, buying art is not a rare thing. It's just something that everybody does. In the United States, it's a leap of faith, you know, that people are afraid of, and there's a suspicion. Well, go out and prove everybody wrong.
There's actually in Britain, and I'm thinking of starting it up too, in Berlin, there's a library where you can check out works of art for 3 months, and I'm starting to check. But it's in Berlin, and I'm actually I'm experimenting with that concept right now, so I've loaned one of my artworks to a friend for 3 months, and he's gonna bring it back, and then you can exchange back and forth. And then I'm thinking of maybe doing a subscription library service and letting my collection out and letting people borrow it.
That's one thing I want to say about growing up in Asia. I grew up in Taipei. Almost every family has some, I mean, it doesn't matter how wealthy or how poor they are, they have some piece of
Because
art.
it's prized.
Even in Japan in the 19th century and the 18th century, where you had subscription ukiyo-e prints, you know, it was just, you know, subscription art series, you know, it's like Reader's Digest, but it was art that came once a month or twice a month, but everyone had it, and it's now really valuable, and it was like fair pasta posters back then.
Also in Mexico, and one thing that at least in our family, when somebody gets married, what you give them is a work of art. At least in like our circle, that was the gift for the house. It was a work of art.
So if people are getting married, instead of going out and buying them in a blender, that's gonna break, give them something that will really document their
I got a wonderful piece of art from friends of ours, because they know that we like art, and they gave us a piece of wonderful Asian print.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Now that's a gift.
Yeah, it's great.
Life enhancing.
Yep. Any other questions? Everybody good?
Thank you very much, everybody.